The word cursed was burned into her palm like a cattle brand, the flesh still raw despite being frozen solid for what looked like days. Sergeant Marcus Cole had seen plenty of horrors during his years as a Buffalo soldier, but nothing prepared him for finding a living girl in what should have been a tomb of ice. The Wyoming mountains in February were no place for the living, much less someone barely clinging to life. Marcus had been tracking deserters through Devil's Canyon when the blizzard hit, driving him to seek shelter in the first cave he could find. His horse Thunder had refused to go any further, and Marcus had learned to trust that animal's instincts more than his own. But as he crawled deeper into the cave, his torch revealed something that made him question everything he thought he knew about this remote territory. The girl couldn't be more than 16, her dark hair matted with ice, her lips blue from cold. But she was breathing, somehow, impossibly alive in this frozen tomb, and burned into her right palm, clear as a signature on a deed, was the word that would haunt Marcus for the rest of his days: cursed. Marcus knelt beside her, his weathered hands gentle as he checked for signs of life. She stirred at his touch, her eyes fluttering open to reveal pupils dilated with terror. "Easy now," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind howling outside the cave. "You're safe. I'm Sergeant Cole, United States Army." The girl's eyes focused on his face, taking in his dark skin, his Buffalo soldier uniform, the kindness in his eyes that had seen too much cruelty. When she tried to speak, only a raspy whisper emerged. "Please, don't take me back to the mine." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice that had nothing to do with the mountain cold. What mine? But before she could answer, the sound of approaching horses echoed through the canyon below. Multiple riders, moving fast despite the treacherous conditions. The girl's eyes went wide with terror. "They found me," she breathed. "They always find us." Marcus moved to the cave entrance, peering through the blowing snow. 6 riders in heavy coats were working their way up the mountain, following tracks that led directly to the cave. These weren't soldiers or lawmen. Their movements were too coordinated, too purposeful. They were hunters, and they'd found their prey. "How many girls?" Marcus asked quietly, returning to the girl's side. "Dozens," she whispered. "Maybe more. They take us from the towns, from the reservations. Say we're workers for the mine, but," she held up her branded palm, "they mark us so everyone knows we belong to them." Marcus studied the burn. The letters were precise, professional. This wasn't the work of some mad prospector or desperate outlaw. This was systematic, organized, backed by money and power. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah. Sarah Whitehorse." The name confirmed what Marcus had suspected. She was native, probably taken from one of the reservations further south. The sound of horses was getting closer. Marcus calculated his options. 6 against 1 were impossible odds, but this cave had only one entrance. If he could hold them off long enough, maybe the storm would force them to retreat. "Sarah," he said firmly, "I need you to tell me exactly where this mine is." "Devil's Canyon Mine," she said. "But it's not just a mine anymore. Mr. Caldwell, She shuddered. "He bought girls like livestock, made us work in the tunnels, said the Indian girls were perfect because we could fit in spaces white workers couldn't." Marcus felt rage building in his chest like a fire fed by dry timber. Caldwell. He'd heard that name before. Railroad money, mining interests. The kind of man who bought politicians and silenced problems. "The ones who wouldn't work," Sarah continued, "or tried to escape. He had them marked and sold them to worse places. Brothels, slave houses down in Mexico. The brand was so everyone would know not to help us." The horses had reached the cave entrance. Marcus could hear voices, muffled by the wind but clearly coordinating a search. "She's in there," one voice called. "Tracks lead right to the cave." "Bring her out alive," another voice replied. "Mr. Caldwell wants to handle this one personally." Marcus helped Sarah sit up, wrapping his cavalry coat around her shoulders. "Can you ride?" She nodded weakly. "If I have to. There's a way out through the back of this cave. It connects to a series of tunnels that'll take us down to the valley. My horse is waiting at the bottom." But Sarah grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "You don't understand. It's not just the mine. Caldwell has men everywhere. Sheriff's deputies, judges, even some army officers. If they catch you helping me..." "Then they catch me," Marcus said simply. "But they don't get to keep doing this to children." The truth was, Marcus Cole had been running from his own demons for too long. He'd fought in 3 different wars, seen good men die for bad causes, and watched evil triumph too often because good men chose to look away. This girl, this moment. It felt like his chance to finally stand for something that mattered. "Besides," he added with a grim smile, "I've got experience dealing with men who think they can own other human beings." The voices outside were getting closer. Marcus grabbed his rifle and positioned himself at the cave entrance, where he could see down the mountain path. "Listen carefully, Sarah. When I start shooting, you head for the back tunnel. Follow it down until you reach the valley floor. Then find my horse Thunder. He's a big black gelding with a star on his forehead. Take him and ride south to Fort Collins. Ask for Colonel Anderson and tell him Marcus Cole sent you. Tell him everything about the mine. What about you? Marcus checked his ammunition. 18 rounds for his rifle, 6 in his sidearm. Against 6 men in defensive positions, it might be enough to buy her the time she needed. I'll be right behind you, he lied. The first shot echoed through the canyon as one of Caldwell's men stepped into view. Marcus's bullet took him center mass, dropping him into the snow. The others immediately took cover behind rocks and trees, but they'd learned something important. The buffalo soldier in the cave wasn't going quietly. "Cole!" one of them shouted. "That's Sergeant Marcus Cole! There's a bounty on his head!" Marcus felt his stomach drop. He'd been recognized, which meant his past had finally caught up with him. 2 years ago, he'd testified against a corrupt army contractor who'd been selling rotten supplies to frontier posts. The contractor had powerful friends, and Marcus had been forced to desert when they tried to have him killed. Now those same friends had found him. "Caldwell's offering $500 for you dead, Cole," the voice continued, "and another $500 for the girl. You can't fight us all." But Marcus was already moving, falling back deeper into the cave as bullets sparked off the stone around him. Sarah had disappeared into the back tunnel. Good. She was following orders. The attacking men were spreading out, trying to flank the cave entrance. Marcus counted muzzle flashes. 5 left, maybe 6, if one was hanging back. His rifle spoke twice more, and he heard a scream of pain echoing through the storm. That's when he noticed something that changed everything. One of the attackers wasn't dressed like the others. Instead of the heavy coats and practical gear of gunmen, this figure wore an expensive overcoat and polished boots, standing well back from the shooting, directing the others with hand signals. Caldwell himself had come to collect his property. Marcus made a decision that would either save them both or get them killed. Instead of continuing to defend the cave, he broke cover and charged down the mountain, screaming like a Comanche warrior and firing as he ran. The surprise attack worked perfectly. 2 more gunmen went down before they could react, and the others scattered for better cover. But Marcus's real target was Caldwell, the man who thought he could buy and sell human beings like cattle. The mine owner was fumbling for a weapon when Marcus reached him, tackling him into the snow. They rolled together down the steep slope, punching and clawing as the storm swirled around them. "You're a dead man, Cole," Caldwell snarled, trying to draw a hideout pistol from his coat. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Marcus replied, driving his fist into Caldwell's jaw. "A coward who brands children and calls himself a businessman." The pistol went off between them, the bullet burning a furrow across Marcus's ribs, but the buffalo soldier had been shot before, and pain only made him angrier. His hands closed around Caldwell's throat. "How many?" Marcus demanded. "How many girls like Sarah?" Caldwell's eyes bulged as he struggled for breath. "Hundreds. Over the years." "You can't stop it. Too big. Too much money, watch me." The mine owner's struggles grew weaker, but before Marcus could finish what he'd started, a rifle butt crashed into his skull from behind. One of Caldwell's men had circled around during the fight. Marcus collapsed into the snow, blood streaming from his head wound. Through blurred vision, he watched Caldwell struggle to his feet, gasping and holding his throat. "Find the girl," Caldwell wheezed. "Search every inch of these mountains if you have to. And when you find her," he looked down at Marcus with pure hatred. "Brand the word traitor on his forehead before you kill him." But as Caldwell's men prepared to drag Marcus away, the sound of hoofbeats echoed through the storm. Not just a few horses this time, a full cavalry patrol, riding hard up the mountain trail. Sarah had made it to Fort Collins. She'd found Colonel Anderson, and she'd brought the entire Buffalo Soldier Regiment back with her. The gunfight that followed was swift and decisive. Caldwell's hired guns, caught in the open on the mountainside, surrendered quickly when faced with 30 seasoned cavalry troopers. Caldwell himself tried to run, but Thunder, Marcus's loyal horse, knocked him down with a well-timed shoulder charge. Colonel Anderson himself helped Marcus to his feet as the prisoners were secured. "Sergeant Cole," he said formally, "your desertion charges have been dropped. Turns out testifying against corruption isn't a crime after all." Marcus nodded gratefully, but his attention was on Sarah. She sat wrapped in cavalry blankets, giving detailed statements to the colonel's aide about the location of Devil's Canyon Mine and everyone involved in Caldwell's operation. "How many others?" Marcus asked her. 43 girls still trapped in the mine," she replied. "Maybe more in the processing camps downstream." The rescue operation took 3 days. When the Buffalo Soldiers finally broke through to the mine's lower levels, They found a network of tunnels filled with girls and young women from a dozen different tribes and settlements. All of them bore brands or scars marking them as property of the mining operation. Caldwell and his associates faced territorial courts for kidnapping, human trafficking, and murder. The evidence was overwhelming, the witnesses credible, and public outrage ensured justice was swift, but the real victory came 6 months later when Marcus received a letter from Sarah. She was attending a school in Denver, learning to read and write, studying to become a teacher herself. Her palm still bore the scar where "cursed" had been burned into her flesh, but she decided to turn that mark into something different. She was going to help other survivors heal from their trauma. The letter included a photograph of Sarah standing in front of a classroom full of children, former victims of trafficking operations throughout the territory. On the blackboard behind her, written in her careful script, were the words that had become her teaching motto: "Every scar tells a story of survival." Marcus Cole continued serving with the Buffalo Soldiers for another 10 years, but he never forgot the girl in the frozen cave or the brand that had revealed a conspiracy of evil. He made it his mission to investigate every rumor of missing persons, every suspicious mining operation, every story that seemed too horrible to believe. Because he'd learned that sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that need telling the most. The Devil's Canyon mine was permanently closed, its tunnels sealed with concrete and stone, but where it once stood, the territorial government built a school for children who'd been lost and found again. They named it the Sarah Whitehorse Academy for Survivors, and carved into the cornerstone were words that Marcus Cole suggested: "No child is ever cursed. Every child deserves to be saved." If you're enjoying this story of courage and justice, please subscribe to our channel. These are the stories that need to be told, about ordinary people who chose to do extraordinary things when faced with evil. Now click on the video on screen, because the next story will show you what happens when justice comes at a price so steep it changes everything. A tale of redemption that will stay with you long after it ends.